Hi, my name is Mike Woodburn from Michael Woodburn Technology, and today I'd like to walk you through an overview of integrating an AI agent with PingOne Advanced Identity Cloud for the purposes of securely building AI agents in a manner that offers granular security, operational efficiency, reduced complexity, and clear auditability. For the purposes of this demo, I've created a couple of basic APIs which utilize OAuth scopes for authorization and return some static values, and a basic UI that can be used to authenticate a user and call some API endpoints. I've also wired this together with an LLM running locally on my laptop in LM Studio, which can be given prompts via the UI to perform actions related to my API endpoints. All of this is integrated with PingOne Advanced Identity Cloud to provide an application OAuth client for my UI, an OAuth client for the resource server to introspect any received access tokens, and PingOne AIC's new AI Agents feature, which allows me to register an agent complete with an owner and an OAuth client for use by the agent, and also create policies for the agent which specify the applications the agent can access, which end users the agent can act on behalf of when accessing the applications, and which scopes the agents can use when accessing the applications on behalf of these users. This simple setup is what allows us to provide governance around our agents while following the principle of least privilege. Before we begin our demonstration, I will provide an overview of the architecture of our solution. To begin with, our resource server provides AI endpoints to be called, protected with OAuth scopes. This resource server also uses the introspection endpoint in PingOne Advanced Identity Cloud to validate the token. Our user interface provides a means for interacting with the demo environment, including login and logout, view details about the logged in user, attempt to access endpoint data, which won't work due to the lack of required scopes, as well as an interface to our HR agent. Our HR agent receives a request from the user via the UI, contacts our local LLM via the OpenAI REST API, where it plans tasks and generates responses, and contacts PingOne Advanced Identity Cloud as needed to acquire properly scoped tokens. Our local LLM running in LM Studio interprets the request, produces an action plan based on the tools provided to the agent, and ultimately generates a response to be handed back to the agent. PingOne Advanced Identity Cloud is our OAuth authorization server and OIDC identity provider, which is responsible for minting the tokens used by the applications in this demo, authenticating our end user, introspecting the access tokens exchanged by the various components, and enforcing our policies around token exchange. Now I'll walk through the demo application, which is running locally on my laptop. I'll start by clicking the Login with AIC button to authenticate an end user. We can utilize some of the functionality within this demo environment to review information about the logged in user, such as details about their token. You see it has a scopes of OpenID, profile, and email, expiring in 3,599 seconds, and we can also see some information about the user themselves. One item to take note of is the subject identifier, which we will see referenced later on in the demo. We can also invoke our resource server and have it introspect the logged in user's access token. Of note here is the may act claim, which includes the client identifier used by our HR agent, the agent demo HR agent client. We'll see this again later on within the demo. We can also attempt to call the endpoints which will be used by our agent. We can see that these calls result in failures due to the lack of the scope required to access the API. In this case, the scope required is pto.read. The tokens only contain OpenID, profile, and email. Now I'll walk through a demonstration of our AI agent acting on behalf of a logged in user to call the payroll and PTO endpoints. Now we're ready to see the demo in action. I will make a request as my logged in user to check my PTO balance and payroll information. This will invoke our HR agent, which will interface with our LLM and develop a plan for how to fulfill the request. The LLM will hand the plan back to the agent, which will then take the logged in user's access token and exchange it for a new delegated access token, which the agent will use to call the appropriate APIs for each required action. One item of note is that the agent will perform two different token exchanges to satisfy this request. The first will be to receive an access token with a PTO read scope, which we will use to call the PTO endpoint, and the second will be to receive an access token with the payroll read scope, which it will use to call the payroll endpoint. Each of these calls is giving us an access token with only the scope that is needed to perform the task at hand, and each access token is short-lived at only 30 seconds, although in reality this could be a considerable shorter period of time. I've got the LM Studio Developer Tools interface open on the right so we can see the LLM working in real time. And now the process is completed and the output is returned back with the AIC-backed HR agent runtime telling us that my PTO balance is 120 days and my current salary is $100,000. Most important thing to review here, of course, is our execution summary, where the agent tells us what it did. First was plan the tool to get the PTO balance, another plan tool to get payroll information. We then authenticated the agent demo HR agent client with a baseline scope of no.scope. This is a workaround because with PingOne Advanced Identity Cloud, you're unable to request an access token with no scopes, so we're simulating that with a no scope scope. Took this access token and requested and received a delegated PTO access token from PingOne Advanced Identity Cloud. This delegated PTO access token includes the end user's subject identifier as the subject for the token, with the agent demo HR agent client identified as the actor. We then called the PTO tool with the token validated by PingOne AIC introspection, and then we performed the same tasks for the payroll access endpoint. We've got simulated logs here, which would be generated client-side within the application, showing the subject, recall the subject identifier from previously in the demo, as well as the identifier for the delegated actor, which is the agent demo HR agent client, and the token scope of PTO read. We'd see the same thing with the payroll call with the required scope of payroll read and the token containing a scope simply of payroll read. From an audit standpoint, I want to share the logs generated by PingOne Advanced Identity Cloud during these transactions. All of these logs are coming from the AM access topic and showcase the step of the HR agent making a request to the PTO endpoint on behalf of the logged in user. The first log here shows the initial request by the agent to acquire a token. This token will not be sufficient for making any calls to the required endpoints, so the agent must exchange this token for one scoped with the PTO read scope. Next, we have the token exchange request made by the agent. Note the details of the request showing the client ID of agent demo HR agent, the grant type of token exchange, and the scope of PTO read. Next is the response from that exchange call, which captures a lot of the same information from the request, but also includes the detail of the subject ID that was used in the token exchange. Recall this subject identifier from earlier in the demo as the identifier of our logged in user M. Woodburn. Finally, we have the introspection call made by the resource server, which shows us the details of the token used by the HR agent, and most importantly, the resource ID of the user on whose behalf the agent is acting. Finally, I'd like to walk through the configuration needed within PingOne Advanced Identity Cloud in order to provide the functionality showcased within this demo. The configuration starts in the applications section, where I've configured an application which is used by our user interface. This web application is configured to utilize the authorization code grant to request an ID token with OpenID, profile, and email scopes. Next, we have an OAuth client configured to perform introspection of the tokens received by our resource server. This is a simple OAuth client using the client credentials grant type and a special scope named AM Introspect All Tokens, which allows it to introspect all tokens minted by PingOne Advanced Identity Cloud. Finally, we have the AI agents configuration, where we've configured the MAW Tech HR agent. We've given it a friendly name and description. We've also assigned an owner for accountability of the agent. You notice this is a confidential OAuth client that's been assigned the no scope scope. Again, this is a workaround so that we can give it a limited access whenever it requests any initial tokens. We've also overridden the lifetime for the access token itself, which you see here is 30 seconds. Again, this could be much shorter given the actions taken by the AI agent with this access token. Under the Advanced tab, we'll see that this is a client credentials grant type assigned to it, as well as the token exchange grant type, which is what facilitates the token exchange transaction. Finally, we have the Applications tab, which is where we assign the policy for access for this agent. We've given it access to the demo application. We've given it access to just a single subject in this case, but you can also assign it to groups of users. If my Woodburn user was not assigned a user for acting on behalf of, you would have been unable to perform the token exchange portion of the demo for this user. We also have the permissions here, which indicate which scopes we're allowed to request during that token exchange transaction. If I removed one or both of these permissions, the token exchange process would fail with an invalid token exchange request. Thank you for taking the time to watch this demo. I hope this has helped clarify the role that an IAM platform like PingOne Advanced Identity Cloud can serve in governing the use of AI agents within your organization. If you have any questions or would like to discuss AI agent governance or any other topic in more detail, I'd be happy to speak with you. Please leave a comment or email me at mwoodburn@mawtechnology.com. Thank you.